My aunt told my kids their mom's a mess, so I told her kids the real reason their dad walked out. The truth wrecked her. Now neither my children nor hers speak to her. Christmas feels a lot quieter these days. The silence that fell after her words was heavier than any shout, a suffocating void punctuated only by the sharp intake of breath from the darkened stairway where my children stood, their faces pale with shock. My Aunt Patricia had just crossed a line so unforgivable, so utterly venomous, that in that moment the world didn't just stop, it fractured. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that there was no going back. To understand how we ended up there, you need to know about Patricia. She's my mother's younger sister, and growing up, she was always the shining star of the family. Beautiful, popular, effortlessly charismatic. She married her high school sweetheart, Derek Wright, right after graduation. They built what looked like the perfect life, 3 kids: Madison, Tyler, and Emma. Meanwhile, I was the awkward one, the late bloomer, still figuring things out well into my 20s. I didn't get married until I was 32, had my twins Sarah and Jacob at 34. Every family gathering felt like a subtle performance, with Patricia in the lead role and me in the wings, enduring her little digs about my unconventional timeline. She'd always find a way to imply I was behind, somehow less than my husband Marcus, a brilliant software engineer, and I have built a good life. I'm a marketing director, and we're comfortable, not wealthy, but stable, happy. We live in a nice suburb outside Cleveland. Our kids go to good schools. But here's the thing: happiness doesn't shield you from family toxicity. The problems with Patricia truly escalated 3 years ago when Derek left her. The family chatter was hushed, never quite getting to the root of it, but Patricia, ever the master of narrative control, painted herself as the victim. Midlife crisis, abandoned for a younger woman, that was her story, and the family, including me, rallied around her. We offered support, helped with the kids. It's what you do for family, right? Derek moving out happened just before Madison's 16th birthday. The divorce was finalized within a year, and Derek relocated to Arizona for work. He tried to stay in touch, video calls, holiday visits, but the physical distance was brutal on everyone. Patricia, though, she collected sympathy like it was currency, spending it on every available ear. What I didn't know then was just how deep the rot truly went. Last Thanksgiving, our house was packed. Mom wasn't feeling well, so we hosted, cramming 23 people into our Cleveland home. The air was thick with the scent of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and simmering family tension. Sarah and Jacob, now 14, helped me set the table, their faces alight with excitement for their cousins, especially Madison, who was 19 and home from college. Patricia arrived late, of course, her signature martyr expression firmly in place. I could tell she'd been drinking before she got there. Her eyes had that glassy, unfocused quality. Her laugh a touch too loud, a bit too brittle. It was a holiday though, so I tried to let it slide. Marcus caught my eye, a silent warning passing between us: keep an eye on her. I nodded, a knot tightening in my stomach. Dinner started fine, a symphony of overlapping conversations, the delightful chaos of a large family gathering, kids giggling at their own table. Then Patricia started, her voice cutting through the warmth. Must be nice to afford a house this big on 2 salaries, she drawled, her gaze sweeping across our dining room. Some of us had to make sacrifices. I ignored it, the comment stinging but not yet enough to crack my composure. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, a solid, reassuring pressure. Sarah, Jacob, you two are so lucky your mom works, she continued, her voice dripping with something ugly and green. My kids had a mother who was actually home for them. My jaw clenched so hard I could feel the muscle ache, but I kept serving mashed potatoes, pretending I hadn't heard, hadn't felt the implicit accusation against my own choices, my own motherhood. The explosion happened after dinner. The kids had retreated downstairs to the sanctuary of video games, while the adults lingered over coffee and pie. Patricia, now on her 4th glass of wine, suddenly turned to my mother, her words slurred just enough to lose their filter. You know what I've been thinking about, Linda? She said, her eyes fixed on my mom. How different our daughters turned out. You raised one daughter who knew how to keep a husband's attention at home, and one who apparently didn't. The entire table went silent, the usual hum of conversation abruptly cut off. My mother's face drained of color. Patricia, that's enough, she said, her voice barely a whisper. No, I don't think it is enough, Patricia declared, pushing back her chair, the scrape against our hardwood floor a harsh shriek in the sudden quiet. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine. I'm tired of watching everyone tiptoe around the fact that my marriage failed while yours, she pointed a trembling finger at me, succeeds because you're willing to do whatever it takes. Marcus, who had been simmering with suppressed rage, stood up. You need to leave. he said, his voice low and dangerous. I'll leave when I'm ready, Patricia snapped, eyes blazing. But first, someone needs to say what everyone's thinking. That little Miss Perfect over here probably got ahead in her career on her back, and her kids should know what kind of mother they really have. The words hung in the air like poison gas, corrupting every molecule of oxygen. My Uncle Robert tried to intervene, but Patricia shrugged him off, her momentum fueled by wine and 3 years of accumulated bitterness. Those kids worship you, she said, pointing her wine glass at me, the liquid sloshing precariously. They think you're some kind of superwoman, but they should know the truth about how women like you operate. Trading on your looks, using men to get what you want. You're nothing but she said it. The word that made my blood turn to ice, then immediately to fire. My mother gasped. Marcus moved toward Patricia, but I held up my hand, stopping him. I stood up slowly, deliberately, every eye in the room now fixed on me. Get out of my house, I said, my voice deadly calm, each word a stone dropping into a deep well. Oh, did I hurt your feelings? Patricia laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. Truth hurts, doesn't it? Get out of my house, I repeated, my voice rising a fraction. She stumbled toward the door, fumbling for her purse. Someone needed to tell those kids who their mother really is. That's when I heard it. A sharp intake of breath from the stairway. I turned and saw them. Sarah and Jacob, frozen on the stairs, faces pale with shock. They'd heard everything. Behind them stood Madison, Tyler, and Emma, equally stunned. Patricia saw them, too. For a fleeting moment, something like regret, like shame flashed across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She walked out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a gaping wound in our family gathering. The aftermath of that night was brutal. Sarah cried for hours, her small body racked with sobs in my arms. Jacob wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't even look me in the eye. My 14-year-old children had just heard their aunt call their mother in front of the entire family. No amount of explanation or reassurance seemed to penetrate the shame and confusion. Marcus was furious, wanted to cut Patricia out of our lives immediately. But I was thinking about something else, something Patricia had said years ago, something I'd overheard by accident and filed away in my memory. It was at a family barbecue, maybe 5 years back. I'd gone inside Derek and Patricia's house to use the bathroom. On my way back out, I passed Derek's home office. The door was cracked open, and I heard crying. Derek was on the phone, his voice breaking. I can't do this anymore, he'd pleaded. She's going to destroy me if this gets out. I have to tell the kids myself before she uses it against me. I'd frozen in the hallway, knowing I shouldn't be listening, but utterly unable to move. Here's the thing about Patricia, her ability to craft a narrative, to play the aggrieved victim, was a finely honed skill, almost an art form. This type of behavior, often seen in individuals with narcissistic traits, involves a consistent pattern of externalizing blame and seeking validation through sympathy, effectively gaslighting those around them into accepting their distorted version of reality. Patricia had become a master of this, creating a persona that allowed her to escape accountability for years. The gambling was bad enough. Derek had continued, his voice heavy with despair. But this, Patricia sleeping with Greg from my company while I was drowning in debt, trying to save the business. He was helping himself to insider information, sabotaging deals so he could start his own competing firm, and then having the audacity to blame me for everything. I'm done. I'm telling the kids the truth about why we're really getting divorced. But he never did tell them. Patricia got out in front of it, spinning her version. Derek had a midlife crisis, abandoned his family. She was the victim, he the villain. The kids chose to believe their mother because she was physically present, while Derek moved halfway across the country. I kept that secret for years because it wasn't my place to say anything. It was Derek's truth to tell or Patricia's to confess. But Thanksgiving night, lying in bed, listening to my daughter cry herself to sleep through the wall, I felt that secret burning in my chest like acid. Patricia had gone nuclear on me in front of my children. She'd used the most vile, degrading language to describe me to my own kids. The gloves were off. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering information. Those 14 days felt like an eternity. Sarah would barely eat dinner, pushing food around her plate, avoiding eye contact. Jacob threw himself into basketball practice, staying late at school, anything to avoid coming home to the silent tension. Marcus tried to be the stabilizing force, but I could see the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior every time he looked at our kids. My mother called multiple times trying to smooth things over. Patricia was drunk, she'd say, always the same excuse. She didn't mean it. You know how she gets when she's had too much wine. I couldn't wrap my head around it. She meant every word, Mom? I'd reply, my voice flat. Drunk words are sober thoughts. She's been thinking this about me for who knows how long, and she finally felt justified saying it out loud. But the children heard everything, all 5 of them. Don't you think we should try to put this behind us for their sake? This kind of enabling behavior, where family members make excuses or protect a problematic individual to avoid conflict, is a classic example of the sunk cost fallacy in social dynamics. The family had invested so much in maintaining a false peace and Patricia's victim narrative that they were reluctant to disrupt it, even when it caused immense harm. The desire to keep the family unit intact often trumps the need for accountability, allowing destructive patterns to perpetuate. That's when I knew what I had to do. Mom was already rewriting history, already making excuses, already asking me to be the bigger person and let it go. The same pattern that had protected Patricia her entire life was starting again. Someone had to break the cycle. I called Derek in Arizona. We'd always been friendly, and he was horrified when I told him what Patricia had said to my kids. "I'm so sorry, Jennifer," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "She's been spiraling since the divorce. I've tried to stay out of it for the kids' sake, but this is unforgivable." "Derek," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something. That night 5 years ago, I overheard you on the phone. The gambling, the affair with Greg, did any of that actually come out during the divorce?" There was a long silence on the other end. "No," he finally said. "My lawyer advised me to keep it quiet, said it would get messy and hurt the kids more than help anything. Patricia agreed to a fair settlement, and I thought that was the end of it. The kids still don't know the real reason we split. They think you left her for another woman. I know." His voice was heavy. "Madison won't even take my calls anymore. Tyler's civil but distant. Only Emma still acts like I'm her dad. I thought protecting their mother was protecting them, but now I'm not sure I did the right thing." "What if they knew the truth?" I asked. Another long pause. "Jennifer, what are you planning?" he asked, a tremor in his voice. "I'm planning to make sure my kids know I'm not what Patricia called me," I said, my voice hardening. "And I think your kids deserve to know why their father really left. They're adults now or close to it. Madison's 19, Tyler's 17. They're old enough to handle the truth." "Patricia will never forgive you," Derek said quietly. "Good," I replied, a cold resolve settling over me. "I don't want her forgiveness. I want her to feel 1 ounce of the pain she caused my children." Derek didn't try to talk me out of it. Instead, he offered to send me documentation, bank statements showing the gambling losses, credit card bills from the time period, text messages he'd saved between Patricia and Greg. He'd kept everything, just in case he ever needed to protect himself legally. The documentation arrived via encrypted email 3 days later. I sat in my home office, door locked, and went through everything. The evidence was damning and meticulous. Derek had screenshots of text messages between Patricia and Greg that left no room for interpretation. Hotel receipts charged to their joint credit card on nights when Derek was probably at home, documented by his own credit card purchases at local restaurants or gas stations. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals of $2,000, $3,000, sometimes $5,000 at a time, all going to cover gambling debts Derek had accumulated trying to save his failing business, while Patricia carried on her affair with a man actively undermining that same company from the inside. There were even emails, Greg and Patricia discussing Derek like he was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed. In one particularly vicious exchange, Patricia had written, "He's so pathetic lately, always stressed about money. Maybe if he was half the man you are, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere." Greg's response was equally callous. "Once his company goes under, I'll have my own firm established with all his best clients. Then you can leave him and we can be together properly." Except that's not what happened. When Derek discovered the affair, Greg immediately backed out of whatever promises he'd made to Patricia. Turns out Greg was also married, also had children, and had no intention of leaving his own family. He'd been using Patricia to get business intelligence while simultaneously using her emotionally. Greg did start his competing firm, stealing Derek's clients, but left Patricia behind in the wreckage. He moved to Seattle with his intact family and his new successful business, built on Derek's stolen contacts. Patricia was left holding the bag of her own choices. Reading through everything made me physically ill, not because I was surprised by Patricia's capacity for cruelty anymore, but because Derek had suffered in silence for 3 years to protect his children from this knowledge. He'd let his own kids hate him, let them think he was the abandoner, the midlife crisis cliché, rather than expose them to their mother's betrayal. That kind of sacrifice seemed noble at first glance, but but I was starting to understand that it had only enabled Patricia to continue being destructive. I printed everything out and stored it in a locked drawer in my office. Marcus found me there one evening, sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. "I'm thinking about how Patricia has gotten away with being a terrible person her entire life because people keep making excuses for her," I said, my voice raw. "I'm thinking about how she attacked our children and will face zero consequences unless someone holds her accountable." Marcus sat down next to me, his hand finding mine. "You're planning something." "I'm planning to give her exactly what she deserves," I confirmed. "Nothing more, nothing less. Just the truth that everyone's been too polite or too scared to say out loud." He was quiet for a long moment. "The kids will hear about it. Madison, Tyler, Emma, there'll be collateral damage." "They're already collateral damage," I said, my voice rising slightly. "They've been casualties of their mother's lies for 3 years. Maybe it's time someone cared enough about them to tell them the truth, even if it hurts. Especially because it hurts. Because living a lie hurts worse in the long run." Marcus squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you. Those are our kids in there, still not sleeping right, still not themselves. Someone has to stand up for them." That conversation gave me the final push I needed. I wasn't just doing this for revenge anymore, though revenge was definitely part of it. I was doing it because silence had protected Patricia long enough, and that protection had come at the cost of too many people's happiness and mental health. Christmas was approaching, and Patricia had the audacity to text me, asking if we were still doing our traditional Christmas Eve gathering. She acted like Thanksgiving hadn't happened, like she hadn't drunkenly called me in front of our entire family. My response was simple: "Yes, we're hosting. Everyone's invited." She showed up with Madison, Tyler, and Emma in tow. Sarah and Jacob barely acknowledged her, their faces carefully neutral. They'd been in therapy since Thanksgiving, working through what they'd heard. Our therapist said they needed time to process, that they were old enough to understand their aunt was wrong, but young enough that the words still cut deep. The gathering was tense. People made small talk, carefully avoiding any real conversation. Patricia held court in the living room, playing the victim as usual, talking about how hard single motherhood was. I watched Madison comfort her, saw Tyler bring her a fresh glass of wine, observed Emma curled up next to her on the couch. Patricia had positioned herself as the martyred mother so effectively that her own kids couldn't see the manipulation for what it was. After dinner, I asked Madison, Tyler, and Emma if they'd help me in the kitchen. Patricia tried to follow, but Marcus intercepted her, engaging her in a lengthy conversation about her new job. She was distracted enough that the 4 of us made it to the kitchen alone. I closed the door, the muffled sounds of Christmas music and conversation from the living room suddenly distant. "I need to talk to you 3 about something," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "It's about your dad." Madison's face hardened immediately. "I don't want to hear anything about him." "Madison, please just listen. You all deserve to know the truth about why your parents really got divorced." "We know why," Tyler said coldly. "He left Mom for someone else. He chose his midlife crisis over his family." "That's not what happened," I said gently, pulling out my phone where I'd saved the documentation Derek had sent. "Your dad never had an affair. Your mom did." The kitchen went silent, save for the distant Christmas music. "That's a lie," Madison said, but her voice wavered, a crack in her certainty. "I wish it was," I said. "Your mom had an affair with Greg, a man who worked at your dad's company. While your dad was drowning in gambling debt, trying to save his business, your mom was sleeping with a man who was actively sabotaging that business from the inside, stealing client information to start his own competing firm. Your dad found out, confronted her, and she threatened to turn the kids against him if he told anyone the truth. So he took the fall. He let everyone believe he was the bad guy because he thought it would hurt you less." Emma had started crying soft, desperate sounds. Tyler looked stunned, his face ashen. "Why would you tell us this?" Madison whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why now?" "Because your mother stood in my dining room and called me A in front of my children," I said, and my voice finally broke, a sharp, ragged edge. "She told my 14-year-old twins that their mother is a who slept her way to success. She damaged my kids in a way that might take years to heal, and she did it because she's bitter and angry and needs someone to blame for her own mistakes." I showed them the phone, letting them scroll through the evidence: bank statements, text messages, credit card bills showing hotel charges when Derek was supposedly on business trips but was actually at home, and Patricia was supposedly at her sister's house but was actually with Greg. emails showing Greg's plan to steal Derek's business contacts and clients while sleeping with his wife. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, I continued, my voice softer now. But you need to know that your dad left to protect himself from someone who betrayed him in the worst possible way. He sacrificed his relationship with you to spare you the pain of knowing what your mother did, and she spent 3 years collecting sympathy while painting him as a villain. Madison was reading the text messages now, her face growing harder with each swipe. Tyler had sunk into a chair at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Emma was crying openly, uncontrollably. Your dad loves you, I said softly. He's always loved you. He calls me sometimes, ask how you're doing because you won't talk to him. He moved to Arizona because staying here, watching Patricia turn you against him, was killing him. But he never stopped being your father. Mom lied to us, Madison said, and her voice was hollow, devoid of emotion. For 3 years, she lied. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. But after what she said to my kids, after the way she attacked me in front of them, I couldn't keep protecting her anymore. Madison looked up at me, and I saw my own pain reflected in her eyes, the pain of a child learning their parent isn't who they thought they were. Does Dad know you're telling us? She asked. Yes. He sent me the evidence because he's tired of being the villain in a story where he was actually the victim. But he was afraid to tell you himself because he didn't want you to think he was trying to hurt your mother. Well, I want to hurt her, Madison said coldly, her eyes blazing. I want her to feel what we're feeling right now. Emma spoke up for the first time, her voice shaking with sobs. I used to ask Dad why he left us. Every video call, every visit, I'd ask him what we did wrong. Why weren't we enough to make him stay? She was sobbing now, and he never defended himself. He just kept saying he loved us and he was sorry, but he didn't do anything wrong. We blamed him for 3 years and he didn't do anything wrong. Tyler stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against my kitchen floor. I told him I hated him last Christmas. I told my own father I hated him because Mom said he chose another woman over us. But there was no other woman. There was just Mom lying to our faces every single day. The weight of their realizations hung heavy in the kitchen, a suffocating blanket of betrayal. Madison had pulled out her phone and was reading through the text messages again, her expression growing harder with each one. I could see her mentally reconstructing the past 3 years, every conversation with her mother, every time Patricia had played the victim while Derek took the blame. She's been getting sympathy from everyone, Madison said slowly, her voice laced with bitterness. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, even my friends' parents. Everyone feels sorry for poor Patricia, whose husband abandoned her. She's built her entire identity around being the wronged woman, and it's all been a lie. I'm sorry, I said again. I wish I could have found a gentler way to tell you, but after what she said to my kids, after watching Sarah and Jacob suffer for weeks, I couldn't protect her anymore. You deserve to know who your father really is, and who your mother really is. We need to leave, Madison announced, her voice firm. I can't be in the same house with her right now. They gathered their things quietly, Emma still wiping tears. When Patricia realized they were leaving, she rushed over, concern plastered across her face. What's wrong? She asked, her glassy eyes darting between them. Why are you leaving so early? Madison turned to face her mother, and the look she gave Patricia could have frozen hell itself. Jennifer told us about Greg, she said simply, her voice devoid of emotion. The blood drained from Patricia's face. She looked at me with pure hatred, then back to her daughter. Whatever she told you, it's a lie, Patricia said quickly, her voice a desperate scramble. Your father put her up to this. He's trying to turn you against me. Stop, Madison cut her off, her voice dangerously calm. Just stop. We saw the evidence, the text messages, the credit card statements, everything. You lied to us for 3 years. You let us hate Dad for something he didn't do while you played the victim. Madison, please. You don't understand? Patricia reached for her daughter, but Madison stepped back, her eyes cold. I understand perfectly, Madison said. You're exactly what you called Jennifer, except worse, because you destroyed your own family and then blamed everyone else for it. Tyler and Emma walked out without saying another word. Madison followed, but paused at the door. You told Jennifer's kids their mom was a... She said to Patricia, her voice ringing with finality. You damaged those children because you're bitter and cruel. But the only in this family is you, Mom. The only Leia is you, and I'm done pretending otherwise. The door closed behind them, leaving Patricia standing in my entryway, surrounded by stunned family members who'd heard everything. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. But whether they were from shame or rage, I couldn't tell. You destroyed my family, she whispered, her voice choked. No, I said calmly, meeting her gaze. You destroyed your family 3 years ago. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. She left without another word. The party broke up shortly after, an awkward, silent exodus. Sarah and Jacob had watched the whole confrontation from the stairs again, but this time, what they witnessed was the truth coming out. Their aunt wasn't the victim she pretended to be. The woman who had called their mother was actually the one who'd betrayed her family. That night, Sarah came into my room and hugged me for the first time since Thanksgiving. I'm sorry I doubted you, Mom, she whispered, her little body trembling. You didn't doubt me, baby? I said, holding her tight, my own eyes welling up. You were hurt and confused, and that's okay. But you know the truth now, all of it. The fallout has been extensive and complicated. Madison called Derek that night, and they talked for 3 hours. She apologized for shutting him out, said she wanted to rebuild their relationship. Tyler followed suit a few days later. Emma never blamed Derek to begin with, but their relationship has strengthened too. Patricia, on the other hand, has been completely frozen out by her own children. Madison moved in with friends rather than go home. Tyler stays with our mom most of the time. Emma splits her time between family members, anywhere but her mother's house. They're all talking to Derek regularly, making plans to visit him in Arizona over spring break. Patricia has tried to do damage control, spinning new versions of the story to anyone who will listen. But the evidence doesn't lie, and most of the family has seen it by now. Derek finally stopped protecting her and shared his side with key family members. The sympathy well has run dry. She's tried to reach out to me twice, once through text, calling me every name she can think of, blaming me for destroying her relationship with her children. Once through my mother, asking for me to tell Madison the truth was exaggerated, that there were circumstances I didn't understand. I blocked her number and told my mother I had nothing to say to Patricia. That first Christmas after the confrontation came and went, we celebrated with Derek and his kids, who flew in from Arizona to spend the holiday with their father and with us. It was the first time in 3 years they'd all been together properly, without the tension of Patricia's lies hanging over everything. Watching Derek hug his children while they cried and apologized was worth every second of Patricia's anger. Patricia spent that Christmas alone. According to my mother, she called repeatedly, desperate to see her kids, but none of them answered. Mom said Patricia sounded broken, defeated. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt, but then I remembered Sarah's face after Thanksgiving, the way my daughter had looked at me with confusion and hurt, and the guilt disappeared. Sometimes, in protecting yourself, you have to be willing to burn bridges. Sometimes the bridge needs to burn. The revelation of Patricia's deceit and the subsequent unraveling of her carefully constructed reality illustrate the profound psychological impact of truth, however painful. For her children, confronting the reality of their mother's manipulation meant a complete re-evaluation of their family history and identity, a process often described as reparenting oneself by acknowledging the flaws of parental figures. For Patricia, losing her narrative meant losing her power and the foundation of her relationships, a consequence of neglecting the fundamental social contract of honesty and trust. Patricia spent years building her identity on a foundation of lies and manipulation. She hurt people, destroyed relationships, and collected sympathy she didn't deserve. When she came for my children, tried to poison them against me with vicious lies, she crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The revenge I took wasn't petty. I didn't slash her tires or post about her on social media. I simply told the truth she'd been hiding for 3 years. The truth destroyed her relationships with her children because those relationships were built on lies. You can't maintain a connection built on deception once the foundation crumbles. Sarah and Jacob are doing better now. They understand their aunt was projecting her own behavior onto me, that hurt people often try to hurt others. We're working through it as a family with our therapist's help. The damage Patricia caused is healing slowly but steadily. Madison, Tyler, and Emma are also in therapy, processing the betrayal of learning their mother lied to them for years. It's not easy for them. Finding out a parent isn't who you thought they were is devastating at any age, but they have their father back and they have the truth, and sometimes that has to be enough. As for Patricia, I honestly don't know what she's doing now. We don't talk. We don't see each other at family events because she's stopped coming to them. My mother says she's moved to a smaller apartment, that the child support from Derek isn't enough to maintain her previous lifestyle without his income. She's working full-time now, something she managed to avoid during most of her marriage. I don't take pleasure in her downfall, but I don't regret my role in it either. She chose to attack my children. She chose to use the most degrading language possible to describe me in front of my 14-year-old twins. She made that choice knowing it would hurt them, and she did it anyway because she was drunk and bitter and needed to lash out at someone. Actions have consequences. Patricia taught me that lesson inadvertently. She taught me that sometimes standing up for yourself and your children means being willing to become the villain in someone else's story. She taught me that protecting bullies, even family bullies, only enables them to hurt more people. Christmas is definitely quieter now. That first year after the confrontation, our gathering was huge, chaotic, full of relatives and noise, and the complicated dynamics of a large family trying to process what had happened. This past Christmas, a full year later, was smaller and more intimate. Derek and his kids came back to visit. My mom joined us along with a few cousins who'd sided with truth over false family loyalty. No drama, no underlying tension, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. Patricia's absence was noted, but not mourned. Her children are building new relationships with a father she tried to erase from their lives. My children have a better understanding of who their mother really is, untainted by Patricia's venom. And I have peace knowing I protected my family the only way I could. Some people have asked if I feel guilty. The answer is complicated. I feel guilty that Madison Tyler and Emma had to learn such a painful truth about their mother. I feel guilty that the revelation came from me rather than from Derek in a more controlled setting. But do I feel guilty for telling the truth? No, absolutely not. Patricia could have apologized after Thanksgiving. She could have shown up sober to Christmas Eve, pulled me aside, and said she was sorry for what she'd said to my children. She could have taken responsibility for her behavior and tried to make amends. Instead, she showed up acting like nothing happened, ready to continue playing the victim while my kids were still in therapy processing her attack. She forced my hand. She gave me no choice but to defend myself and my family with the only weapon I had: the truth about who she really was. The truth is a powerful thing. It can heal and it can destroy. Patricia spent years hiding from her truth, building elaborate lies to protect her image. When those lies finally crumbled, everything she'd built on top of them came crashing down too. Her relationship with her children, her reputation in the family, her carefully constructed victim narrative, all of it collapsed under the weight of reality. I think about that night sometimes. The look on her face when Madison confronted her. The way she tried to lie even then, to spin one more story, to manipulate one more time. And the way Madison shut her down, calmly and coldly, refusing to be gaslit anymore. That was the moment Patricia lost everything, and she knew it. Derek thanked me, which was unexpected. He said he should have told his kids the truth years ago, that he made a mistake trying to protect Patricia at his own expense. He said, watching them rebuild their relationship with him has been the greatest gift, and he's grateful I was brave enough to do what he couldn't. Brave. That's an interesting word for it. I don't feel brave. I feel like a mother who protected her children from someone who attacked them. I feel like a woman who refused to be diminished by someone else's bitterness. Maybe that's the same thing as bravery. I don't know. What I do know is that my family is stronger now. Sarah and Jacob see me as someone who will fight for them, even when it's hard, even when it means becoming the bad guy in someone else's story. Marcus respects me for standing my ground. Derek has his children back, and 3 young adults have learned an important lesson about truth, consequences, and the danger of unchecked manipulation. Was it worth it? The family drama, the tension, the permanent severing of a relationship with my aunt. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Because my children's mental health and self-worth are more valuable than maintaining false peace with someone who actively tried to damage them. Patricia made her choices. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie about why her marriage ended. She chose to attack me and my children when her own life wasn't going the way she wanted. And now she's living with the consequences of those choices. Alone in a small apartment, cut off from her children, her reputation in ruins. I made my choices too. I chose truth over silence. I chose my children over family politics. I chose to fight back when attacked rather than turn the other cheek. And I'm living with the consequences of those choices too, which include a quieter Christmas, a smaller family circle, and the knowledge that I can be ruthless when my children are threatened. Some people say I should have been the bigger person, that I should have let Patricia's attack slide, that family is more important than pride. Those people didn't watch their children cry themselves to sleep after being told their mother is A. Those people don't understand that being the bigger person sometimes means standing up to bullies, even when those bullies are family. The holidays came and went. We're settling into a new normal now. My kids are thriving in therapy. Derek's kids are healing from years of believing a lie. Marcus and I are stronger than ever. Our relationship tested and proven solid. And Patricia is somewhere out there dealing with the wreckage of her own making. Justice isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as the truth finally being told after years of silence. Sometimes it's a family gathering without the toxic person who's been poisoning it for years. Sometimes it's just peace, quiet, and the absence of chaos. Christmas is way quieter now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. When faced with a deeply toxic family member who actively harms others, particularly children, where do you draw the line between maintaining family ties and protecting your own well-being and the truth? This story highlights profound psychological and social dynamics often at play within families. If you or someone you know is navigating complex family relationships, especially those involving persistent blame shifting, manipulation, or emotional abuse, understanding these patterns can be incredibly empowering. We encourage you to research concepts like narcissistic personality traits, gaslighting, and the impact of covert emotional abuse on children. Learning to identify these behaviors is the first step towards setting healthy boundaries. Explore resources from licensed therapists, psychologists, or reputable mental health organizations that specialize in family systems and trauma. They offer invaluable guidance on how to protect your mental health, communicate effectively, and, when necessary, safely disengage from toxic dynamics to foster healthier relationships for yourself and your loved ones. Awareness is your greatest tool.